Okay, so it's been a few days and there's more boxing news. Let's talk about the big one, which is Conor Benn failing his drug test. Now, he was being tested by the UK anti doping agency and VADA, the voluntary anti doping agency. Uh, there's some controversy because the British board apparently don't have the right to cancel the fight as it was being done by VADA. Um, Eddie Hearn has contradicted himself, but look, I could sit here and have a go at all these promoters: Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, Bob Arum. I could sit here and talk about Tyson Fury's failed drug test, the rumor that Anthony Joshua has a testosterone usage exemption. I could talk about Dylan White's failed test. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to talk about really the most guilty party involved in this and about the drug itself. So, first of all, people making jokes because it's a female fertility test. Well, it's a selective estrogen modulator a selective estrogen receptor modulator that he took a CERM. Now, it's called Clomid. I've known people take Clomid. It's used as a post-cycle therapy drug and can actually be used alongside steroids. It essentially prevents your estrogen receptors from becoming sensitive, for a lack of a medical term, so you get less problems like water retention, gynecomastia, which is bitch tits to you and me. Now, in terms of this drug, it's a bit of a performance enhancer, but it can cause issues with your joints and things like that. To me, this is a weird one to be popped for, and it reeks of a novice who doesn't actually know how to take drugs and get away with it. So let's talk about something important, which is testosterone usage exemptions. To get one of these in sports. The World Anti-Doping Agency does accept testosterone replacement therapy. But the thing is about testosterone replacement therapy is you're putting in a small amount to prevent things like heart attacks, strokes later on, and keep up your sex drive, because not having enough testosterone in your system is not good for you. But with that comes a great advantage to doping, because when you come off steroids, your testicles aren't producing anywhere near as much testosterone, so you become hypogonadal, which means you're not producing enough, you're not producing a healthy amount. So lots of athletes have a testosterone usage exemption. Now, there is rumours that Anthony Joshua has one. I don't know if that's true or not. And I'm not saying Conor Benn took Clomid, because actually you can get a tainted test. We should wait for the B sample. But also, it's a very small amount in his body, apparently. Now, there's a fails test, and then there's sort of a suspicious test. So, if I had 10 times the testosterone in my body that I should, then that's considered, obviously, it's a failed test, unless I use epitestosterone, but I'm not going to get into that. If I have a trace amount of synthetic testosterone in my system, then it's time to hand over all your food, supplements, and this kind of thing to see if there's anything that's been contaminated. And this is why I believe the Canelo tainted beef story is because Alvarez is a cash cow. Now, for the record, I believe Alvarez is on drugs, and I believe he's on a lot of drugs, but I don't believe he took clenbuterol because he's a cash cow. He can speak to the people in the world who know the most about getting past drug tests and giving him the best performance enhancers available. Clenbuterol isn't a particularly good performance enhancer for some people because it makes you breathe so heavily. They don't enjoy it. It can make people's heart race. It's not particularly effective at cutting weight, and it has about a 3 to 6 week detection time. I can think of drugs much better that would have a very short detection time and have way less side effects, at least in the immediate term, to clenbuterol. Also, the amount in his system is now no longer considered a positive test because these drugs are actually used in cattle. Trenbolone has been used in cattle, clenbuterol is used in cattle, and clenbuterol is used in cattle in Mexico. And this is the thing, I don't know how much is in Conor Benn's system. It's possible it's a tainted test. We have to wait for the B sample, and it's possible that he just got a trace amount through food, water, or whatever. Now, let's talk about testosterone usage exemptions. As I said, when you take testosterone synthetically, it suppresses your own natural production. So what you can do is take a short chain ester, such as testosterone propionate, which will be out of your system within a week or so. So you do a 6-week steroid cycle, come off cold turkey, give yourself a few weeks, go to the doctor and ask for a testosterone test. Your testosterone will be in the dumps, so they will give you testosterone replacement therapy. And they can even give you things like Nolvadex and Clomid, which Nigel Benn tested positive for Clomid, and you can get an exemption to use those. And the reason is because Nolvadex and Clomid are often used alongside testosterone to suppress some of the side effects. And most importantly, you can get an exemption for HCG, which will stimulate the pituitary glands to keep your natural production high, so that you don't become infertile, and it can reduce the risk of cancers as well associated with the suppression. Okay, now what's the benefit to that? The benefit to that is your testosterone levels remain stable, and that means you don't have to cycle on and off steroids, and you'll keep more of the benefits. Okay, so picture this: if I was legally taking a replacement dose of testosterone, I could then use short chain esters to boost my levels when I know that a test is coming or that I'm due to be tested. I can come off. It'll be out of my system quickly, and my levels won't be in the dumps. They'll just be the testosterone of the average man. I'll get tested, and I'll keep most of my gains. That's sort of how more professional cheaters do it. This is why, to me, if Conor Benn has tested positive for Clomid, he doesn't really know much about the testing, and it reeks to me of somebody who's just jumped on. And people were saying that he was going life and death with Journeyman, then he knocks out Chris Algieri in 2 rounds, he's looking like a powerhouse suddenly. It does reek to me of somebody who doesn't really know how to get around a drug test. Now, Chris Eubank Jr. said he has an app on his phone and they can test him anytime between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. any day. If that's the case, then the VADA testing is even worse than I thought, because that's a 1 hour time slot. You could literally go and pin testosterone suspension, and then the next day your levels would be back to normal. So maybe he meant between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m, or maybe he meant that, well, I was going to say maybe if it's any other time in the day, they have to organise it with him. But if that's the case, then it's very useless. So if it's a 13-hour time slot, it's somewhat okay, but even then, it's not very good. And if it's a 1 hour time slot, it's absolutely dreadful. Now, I'm not going to sit here and condemn Conor Benn. I don't particularly like him as a person, but I've made my views on performance-enhancing drugs clear. I think there should be a non-tested federation so that we can end this dog and pony show and stop pretending that athletes aren't all using drugs. I don't find it immoral. I don't find it unsafe. I think athletes are always going to use drugs, and actually that the testing makes it less safe and less fair. And I've done a detailed video on why that is, but quick brief. The drugs that get around testing are expensive, hard to find, and dangerous. So let's say I have less money, I'm not going to be able to get around the test. And let's say I'm an athlete who has given their life to becoming a boxer, or any athlete really, and I realise I can't compete without drugs because everyone's using them. Now, because of the drug testing, I have to use things like insulin to get around the drug testing, and I have to inject myself very frequently with short-chain testosterone, which doesn't actually have any real sort of medical grade of it. There's not really much medical grade propionate, and I don't know of any medical grade test base or suspension. It forces me to use more dangerous drugs and to inject more frequently. Now, the really true scumbag, I don't want to call him a scumbag, but I know people getting on at Eddie Hearn, and I don't blame them, but Cal Sauerland, however you say his name, I like him, he's funny. You type in Cal Sauerland, first thing that pops up is off his chops. So that should tell you who Cal Sauerland is. He's a funny guy, but he is the promoter for Eubank Jr. He should have pulled the fight. He should have leaked it and said, no, this can't go on. And I have my theory as to why he didn't. Personally, I believe these promoters know that they're all on drugs and they don't care. Do you think that Cal Sauerland is a clean individual yourself, or do you think that he's in the loop about steroid usage in gyms, commercially, and private boxing gyms? Personally, I think he doesn't really care about it. This is my opinion. I'm not throwing him under the bus. That's my opinion. If you're going to act like you find it's too dangerous, etc., then you should have pulled him out sooner, not when more people have bought their hotels, their flights, their trains, and tickets, because this test was about 4 to 6 weeks ago. You should have just ended it there instead of waiting for this story being leaked to the press. Some people have speculated that Eubank Sr. leaked this to the press, and that's personally what I think. I think he's managed to do that somehow. Now, about the morality of this, if you saw my video about this fight, you would know that I said I'm not interested, I'm not going to watch it, and personally I find rehydration clauses ridiculous and immoral. To me, not allowing Chris Eubank Jr. to fully hydrate after the weigh-in is far more immoral than using drugs. And I completely agreed with his dad that it shouldn't happen. It should have been pulled. And I feel dreadful for Eubank Sr., who, as he said, he's lost a son last year. And now he has to watch his son fight dehydrated. As he said, I've lost a son, I can't let it happen again. Now, we all like money and what have you, but had I been in Conor Benn's situation, at that moment, I think I would have said, in fact, I know I would have, that's fair enough. If Eubank Jr. wants to pull out, then he can. And the reason I know I'd say that is because I wouldn't get any personal satisfaction out of beating someone who I put a rehydration limit on. If I've got a massive problem with someone to the point that I want to fight them, I'm not going to say to them, okay, you have to fight me dehydrated or you're a wimp. Now, I don't think Conor Benn should be banned. I think there should be an untested federation and all this. I'm not particularly interested in him or his career, but in terms of things that he's done, asking somebody to fight him dehydrated, to me, is unacceptable. And it was unacceptable when Canelo did it as well. And, you know, people are getting on their high horse about this, and, oh, it's so dangerous and all this, and look, you weren't talking about the rehydration clause, were you? You wouldn't have cared if anything had happened to Chris Eubank Jr., would you? You wouldn't have cared. if he'd ended up seriously injured, you would have moved along, and then we'd deal with the whole boxing should be banned thing, and then it will die out after about a week because it's not going to get banned. And Chris Eubank Jr.'s family, his father, his mother, his living brothers and sister would have been left to deal with it. You're going to be getting on to Conor Benn about this drug when you never said to him in the build-up, are you not afraid of crippling Chris Eubank Jr. like your dad did to Jared McClellan, because Eubank Jr.'s brain is going to be susceptible to head injury. None of the media were saying that. They're going to get on their high horse and virtue signal, and that's going to be what will happen. Whether he gets banned or not, I doubt he'll serve a 4-year ban, because he can get other federations, he can get other commissions to allow him to fight, and that's all there is to that. I might make a video tearing into Eddie Hearn and all of this, but then if I do that, I have to make a video tearing into Bob Arum, Frank Warren, Tyson Fury, Dillian White, Anthony, all these fighters and promoters and managers. I'd rather stick to what I think about drug testing, give you some education on why I think the drug testing doesn't work, tell you what I think of the two fighters involved, and really the promoter who has some sort of duty of care to his fighter. I haven't spoke about Junior. Well, look, you should know if you watched my previous videos, I believe pretty much every athlete is on drugs. I just find it funny that everyone is throwing Conor Benn under the bus now, but the bigger, stronger, leaner, more powerful athlete is just being assumed to be clean because he gets drug tested between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. Or 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. as he said. I don't really get that at all. I don't think it makes Junior a bad person, but of course, I have my beliefs. I believe most top athletes are on drugs. How has Junior got the energy, got the strength, got the stamina, got the power, got the muscle mass that he has whilst staying so lean all the time? Because this guy seems to stay absolutely shredded year round. You need to eat to grow. The exception is if you're on a lot of drugs, and he remains full. He doesn't look like a string bean. His muscles are full of glycogen and water, and yet he must 100% be natural because his dad looked like that during a time where there was practically no drug testing. So those are my thoughts on it. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. I'm not saying that Eubank Jr. is definitely on drugs or his dad was. That's just my view on it, and we're all allowed to have a view. Eubank Jr. is quite an exciting fighter. I find his dad to actually be an important voice in boxing because his main thing is keep the fighters safe, get them paid first, and don't chuck them into mismatches. Don't let them dehydrate and all this kind of stuff. I like that. So rather than sort of tear into someone who hasn't failed a test and somebody who, well, they're both still grieving after the loss of Sebastian Eubank, I'd rather just sort of try and keep this one a bit more positive and informative. So tell me what you think. I know it's been a long-winded one, but thank you very much. You have a great day. Thank you.